Quint.
Thanks for joining us on Power Lunch. This is Bloomberg Quint. I'm Harsha Subramaniam.
Good afternoon. I'm Meera Dugal. Let's get to the headlines. Polling is underway in the third and largest phase of Lok Sabha elections, with voters across 117 constituencies casting their votes today. Kerala sees the highest voter turnout in the first few hours of voting.
The Sensex and the Nifty clock muted gains as investors remain cautious amidst elections.
Blackstone Private Equity will buy controlling stake in SL Propack for 2,157 crore. The deal will also trigger an open offer.
Air passenger growth fell to its lowest level in 5 years in March as Jet Airways and SpiceJet were forced to ground planes for different reasons.
All right, getting to all that in a minute, but let's first check in on the markets. Yatin is here with us. Afternoon, Yatin.
Good afternoon, Neera. We are much better than what we closed yesterday. We were down 100 points yesterday and, 30, 40 points up in trade today. Market breadth also looking very good. So most of the stocks which were declining in trade yesterday have recouped some of the losses. If you look at the advanced decline ratio also, it's almost 1:1 at this point in time, which was quite weak in trade yesterday. So we have been able to recover some of the losses that were made yesterday. Z, Indiabulls Housing Finance, ONGC, Yes Bank are the few gainers at this point in time on the Nifty. If you look at Z, that stock is up nearly 5% in trade today after we had the promoter group which clarified that the deal progress with respect to promoter stake sale is going on track. What's not doing well in trade is GAIL, NTPC, BPCL, IOC. So these are the few PSU stocks which are losing steam in trade. In fact, GAIL has agreed to acquire ILNFS wind power assets for a consideration of nearly 5,000 crores, and post the announcement we saw some nervousness trickling in the stock price for trade today. What's also active in trade is Yes Bank, Jet Airways. Remember, after yesterday's fall of 15%, the stock managed to recover in the second half. Today also the stock opened strong, 10% up for that one at the highest point in trade today in trade right now. And Reliance Capital as well as Reliance Power are the few Anil Ambani group stocks which are doing well in trade after the losses that they made yesterday.
Ethan, thanks for that. Blackstone will buy a controlling stake in SL Propack. This is a company promoted by Ashok Goel, the younger brother of Subhash Chandra, who owns other SL Group companies like Z. So the Subhash Chandra Group need not benefit from this deal. Agam is standing by with the deal contours and what this means for the group as a whole.
Right, Harsha. So we do know that Blackstone has, and is looking to buy around 51% stake in SL Propack. This was statement. This was through a statement which came out yesterday, post market hours. Now they are going to buy 51% stake from Ashok Goel Trust. Ashok Goel Trust holds 57% stake in all and is also enlisted as a promoter in SL Propack. And this stake will be bought at around 134 rupees per share, which was largely at yesterday's closing price. But the Indian Takeover Code also mandates that Blackstone go ahead and float an open offer, and the open offer will be floated at 139 rupees per share, which was at a little bit of a premium as per yesterday's closing price. It is at a premium to current price as well. Now, in terms of consideration for the 51% stake, it will be bought at around 2,157 odd crores, and the additional 26% stake, provided that all of it gets subscribed for, that will come up to approximately 1,054 odd crores. There are a lot of questions as to what Blackstone stands to gain from SL Propack, and Blackstone says that it will get another leg into the consumption space in India, considering SL Propack is into manufacturing laminated tubes for a lot of these consumption companies. The other question was as to what Ashok Goel gets from selling his stake, and whether or not it has anything to do with the challenges that the Z Group faces. And Ashok Goel has suggested that it doesn't. But we spoke to him this morning, and this is what he had to say. Listen.
The beneficiary of this family trust is me and my immediate family. Any of this timing seemed a little odd, but I had started this process much earlier before any of the group issues were known, and therefore this has no bearing no interconnection whatsoever in terms of financial or commercial. We are a strong family, larger family. We care for each other. That's a fact. But financially, commercially, we are not interrelated at all.
Jet Airways' debt troubles and the subsequent grounding of aircraft has hurt the overall growth of the industry in March, but competitors have made most of the situation to occupy the space vacated by Jet. Samit Sarkar is standing by with the data. Samit.
So if you see the domestic passenger growth rate in India for the quarter ended March was the lowest in the last 5 years due to aircraft groundings. Now passenger growth from an average of nearly 19% in the last 3 years has fallen to 5% in the fourth quarter of financial year 2019 as Jet Airways and SpiceJet had to ground as many as 50 planes in the month of March. Now Jet had to do it because of the non-payment to lessors, while SpiceJet was asked by DGCA to ground due to the concerns related to the MAX 737-800. Now for the month of March, only if you see the passenger growth rate was flat compared to last year, and among the larger players, Indigo's passenger growth rate stood out as it grew nearly 19% compared to last year. Go Air passenger growth rate was close to 10.5%, while that of SpiceJet was lower at close to 7.3%. Vistara and AirAsia's passenger growth rate was 11% and 31% compared to last year, while that of Air India's passenger growth rate was negative 2% in the month of March 2019. Now, if you see for Jet Group, especially for Jet Group, if you see the passenger growth, now that declined nearly 65% compared to last year, while that market share, now that declined to 5.8% to close to 11% in the month earlier, and that is because of the groundings that we have seen. And currently, if you see, Jet Airways has stopped its operations. Now on the passenger load factor, which is also the capacity utilization for the sector, now that has fallen for all the major players because of this lower passenger growth rate. Now for Indigo, compared to last year, the passenger load factor has declined by nearly 300 basis points to 86%, while that of Air India has declined by 280 basis points. SpiceJet, now that company has been able to maintain a 90% plus passenger load factor for the 47th consecutive month, but if you see compared to last year, this is a decline for the 10th consecutive month where the company has seen a decline in its passenger load factor. In the month of March, it declined by nearly 200 basis points, while that for Vistara's passenger load factor declined by 140 basis points, while that of Go Air and AirAsia increased by nearly 550 basis points and 340 basis points compared to last year. Now on the market share front, if you see, India's largest airline, that is Indigo, has continued and has grown larger in the month of March. The market share has increased to 46.9% from 43% in the earlier month, while that of in the earlier year it was around 39.5% in the March 2018. Now it has increased to 46.9%, while that of Go Air, if you see, now that has also increased to 9.9% from close to 9% in the earlier month, while that of other players like AirAsia, Vistara and Air India, that has remained largely stable, and so the of SpiceJet that has also remained largely stable at 13.6% in the month of March.
All right, Samit, thanks so much for that. Let's move on. The Bimal Jalan Committee, which was to look at the RBI's balance sheet and its capital framework and submit a report by the end of March, has still not done so. We are still awaiting the report. But ahead of that, Bank of America Merrill Lynch has done an exercise of its own to try and estimate what is the extra capital that could be on the RBI's balance sheet, which could be freed up under certain assumptions. Joining us to talk about some of those findings is Indranil Sengupta, Chief India Economist at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. Indranil, thanks so much for joining us. Very complex and very wide-ranging subjects, so I'm going to try and keep my questions a little pinpointed. My first question to you is this, Indranil. In the exercise that you had conducted, should one start with the assumption that it's going to be easier for the Reserve Bank to perhaps transfer out of its accumulated contingency reserves rather than start going and touching the revaluation reserves, because then you get into the argument of whether those are reserves at all or just accounting numbers?
Well, yes, for sure. Contingency reserves are, interest income that you have actually received. So that's one. When you look at revaluation reserves, there is also one component which you have actually received when you've sold, your dollar assets or sold your FX. So that's also realized. Thirdly, then it becomes a question of what you think is your optimal revaluation reserve. So for example, if you said that is 25% appreciation from here on, then there's hardly anything to transfer. If you said that it is something around 20%, then you can transfer almost 2 trillion rupees, because every 1 rupee change gives you around 40,000 crore in terms of revaluation.
Okay, so again, now two parts to the question. So on your assessment that you have made, one scenario is where the contingency reserve gets reduced to half of what it is right now. Can you help us explain firstly why that assumption that we can do with just half the contingency reserve that we have right now, and then what kind of capital that would release?
Yeah, so if you see contingency reserves, our contingency reserves are almost 6.5% of balance sheet, which is more than far higher than the 2% BRICS average ex-India. So even if you bring that down to half, which is 3.25% balance sheet, you would be far higher than other BRICS. So that's one. Secondly, we estimate that right now you are covered for a 9% increase in yields. Given that yields are somewhere in the 7-8% range, that's a huge cushion. Suppose you halved that to 4.5%, even then you could release about 1.1 trillion. So the point is that even if you halved your contingency reserves, you would have a cushion which is far more than almost every other comparable peer country has.
It's a little counterintuitive though, isn't it, Indranil? Because, we had that 12% number which the Subramaniam committee had put out. I know that's way dated. It was in the 90s when we got that number. But one could argue that since then, if anything, the economy has grown larger. It has become more sort of externally linked, more open. And hence, if anything, the contingency reserve should at least be at the same amount rather than lower. What would be the counter argument to that?
Well, when you look around the world, no one has anything close to 12%. And the fact is that, whether you have 2 trillion or 4 trillion, it is not really going to count much in case there is a big, sell-off as far as your country is concerned. What is going to matter far more is how much of FX reserves you have. So the ability of contingency reserves to weather a macro shock, I think is debatable. What is important that you have high FX reserves. So
last
from
resort
that
function,
perspective,
Indranil?
we are not saying that you do away with contingency reserves. Sorry?
What about lender of last resort function? I get your point on the an external shock, but what about an internal shock emerging from your lender of last resort function?
But that's, you're the central bank, you print money. Lender of last resort has nothing to do with contingency reserves. Contingency reserves are there only for, bearing a loss because of higher yields.
Okay.
That completely two separate functions that we are talking about here.
Okay. Okay, Indranil. Now, the other question that you put out in your report is that if a transfer were to happen, what would be the mechanism which would be best suited for it to be liquidity neutral? Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, so, once you are releasing money from RBI's reserves, there are two cases, right? One is that you release it and it becomes liquidity, in which case you have to cut down parallel forms of liquidity injection. For example, if you monetized your excess capital, you would have to either run down the amount of OMO you do, or you would have to contain the amount of FX you buy. But in one case where you use this money to recapitalize banks, that is a liquidity neutral transaction, that is a fiscal neutral transaction. So what you're essentially doing is you're giving the government the money, the government passes that money to the banks in the form of capital, the banks in turn put the money back in a government scheme, and which is parked with the RBI. So it's basically a play on the recap bonds we have without adding to public debt. So that is going to be both fiscal and liquidity neutral. That will allow the RBI to do its normal OMO, buy FX, whatever it is in a normal basis, plus improve bank capital, allow potential lending. So any which way you see, it will create catalyst for lending rates to come off.
Is that the only sort of use that you foresee would be appropriate for any sort of capital released in this manner? I ask because if it were to be used for regular revenue expenditure, A, that would perhaps send out the worst possible signal. B, I'm not sure how they would do it, because a large transfer would not be a revenue receipt, right? So it should not be used for revenue expenditure?
We will have to wait and see how it is used. But in other forms, you will be adding to liquidity, and therefore you would have to cut back on OMO or RBI's FX purchases. In this way, you can continue to do both. And the money you save, for example, in this process, you can use for other forms of fiscal support where that you may like. So the issue here is that it is really up to the government to decide what they will do with the money. All we are saying is that this is one method which is liquidity neutral, which is fiscal deficit neutral, which helps to recapitalize banks, improve their health, allow lending, lowers lending rates.
Okay. And just the last couple of questions. So I think, there have been different benchmarks that have been used by different people who have commented on this. And one, from Rakesh Mohan was the fact that, you're at 20% of GDP in terms of the total assets of on the balance sheet. And that's been more or less constant. And I think he was questioning what is the need to change that. Are you looking at all at it from that perspective that, as a percentage of GDP, it's been this way for a very long time, and the reason to change it is not there?
No, we are looking at it from, as you can see, we are looking at it from relative benchmarks, what other central banks have. We are looking at it from potential costs in terms of rises in yields. We are looking at it in form of how much of appreciation cover you need at this point in time. There was also the Usha Thorat committee, which was set up by the RBI. Usha Thorat being one of the most distinguished deputy governors you had in the RBI. And that committee had recommended a 18% cap. So we are saying that, okay, let's be a bit more conservative. Let's have a 20% cap. Even then you can release 2 trillion rupees.
Okay. Last word then, Indranil. If this were to happen, you're fairly confident that this will not be seen, A, negatively by rating agencies, B, just an impression that it creates about, sort of independence of the central bank, or do you think one has to divorce those slightly sort of subjective issues from the objective issue at hand here?
No, I do not see why it should be treated as a problem by rating agencies. No other country has this kind of, reserves. That's number one. That's what I'm saying, that this is not required by any other central bank in any country. That is number one. Number two, it is a trade-off between holding huge sums of money at the central bank balance sheet, which could be otherwise used to stimulate the economy, and without in any way impairing the strength of the RBI balance sheet. Whether you hold 2 trillion more or 2 trillion less is not going to change the strength of the RBI balance sheet, which in any case depends on how much of FX reserves you hold rather than how much of excess capital you hold. On the other hand, if you use this money to stimulate the economy, then you can give growth and a leg up through lower lending rates.
All right, Neil, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. The debate will continue until Bimal Jalan gives his final recommendations. Thanks for joining us.
Interesting there. Let's talk about politics now. 117 constituencies across 12 states, 3 union territories have gone to polls today. 19 crore voters will choose among 1,640 candidates. That includes Anantnag in Jammu and Kashmir, where voting has been spread across 3 phases. Tamanna is standing by to get us up to speed on the key fights in phase 3 of election 2019.
The third phase of the big Indian elections is the one with the most seats so far. Here is what you need to watch out for in phase 3. In 2014, riding high on Gujarati Asmita and the excitement of sending their chief minister to Delhi, the state gave the BJP a score of 26 on 26. But even at its depths then, the Congress still held on to a 33% vote share. The 2017 assembly polls showed BJP how rural distress could really anger voters, and the party will be hoping voters give greater weightage to Modi's re-election as PM rather than issues of rural distress and joblessness. Let's come to Kerala, and which is another interesting factor in phase 3. All 20 seats, of course, go to polls in this phase, in a state where the fight is essentially between the Congress and the left. The UDF, which is the Congress alliance, bagged 12 out of 20 seats in 2014, despite anti-UPA sentiments before that election. This time round, the BJP is hoping to open its account in Kerala, riding on the Sabarimala issue. That brings us to, of course, the big contests in this phase 3. There are a lot of them, but we've narrowed it down to some of the key ones. It's exciting because it's also battle of the presidents, party presidents, that is. Amit Shah makes his Lok Sabha debut from the seat of Gandhinagar. That's a safe seat for the BJP. LK Advani won from here 6 times, but did not get a ticket this time round. The BJP president faces off against C.G. Chawda of the Congress in this seat. Congress President Rahul Gandhi also faces the voters of Wayanad, now famous for different, sort of strategies of what its population is and the composition of its population is. Rahul Gandhi goes up against P.P. Sunir of the CPI. He's promised not to attack the left, but the left is in no mood to return that favor. Let's look at some of the other key seats, and Kerala is very exciting also because of this seat. Shashi Tharoor versus Kummanam Rajasekharan in the Thiruvananthapuram seat. Shashi Tharoor is trying his best to hold on to this seat, but will face a tough challenge from the BJP. Mr. Rajasekharan was the governor of Mizoram till recently and has been brought in especially for a fight with Shashi Tharoor. Well, another big seat where the BJP is hoping for gains is in the seat of Pattanam Thitta, where the Sabarimala temple is located. Of course, they've made this a big issue. It's featured in their manifesto as well. And K. Surendran of the BJP goes up against Anto Antony here. It will be interesting to see if the Sabarimala issue has really resonated with voters here. Let's move to Karnataka, where the key fight is in Kalburgi. Mallikarjun Kharge, who was the leader of opposition in the outgoing Lok Sabha, faces up against Umesh Jadhav of the BJP. Uttara Kannada is the other big seat over here that we're keeping an eye on. Union Minister and controversial one at that, Anant Kumar Hegde, goes up against Anand Asnotikar, who till 2018 was with the BJP and then hopped on to the JDS. So that'll be an interesting battle. Let's come to Maharashtra and Baramati. This is a Pawar family stronghold where Sharad Pawar's daughter Supriya Sude is hoping to be re-elected and faces up against Kanchan Kul of the BJP. Let's come to Kashmir, another one of the key seats that we've selected for you. And here Anantnag, which goes to polls in 3 phases because of security concerns, sees former Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti trying to woo back voters. She goes up against Ghulam Ahmad Mir of the Indian National Conference, of the Indian National Congress. It's going to be a tough fight for Mehbooba Mufti, and she's hoping voters will not punish her for having allied with the BJP in her state government until the government came apart. And the last battle we've picked for you is the fight in Puri, Odisha, where it's the battle of the spokespersons. You possibly think that these 2 faces are familiar because you've seen them on nightly TV debates. Sambit Patra of the BJP is making his Lok Sabha debut against Pinaki Mishra of the Biju Janata Dal, who also often appears on television debates. This is going to be an interesting match, especially seeing how Sambit Patra has made made sure he is in the media space through his campaign. But will it be enough to outshout voters and attract them in phase 3? That's the big question.
Thanks for that, Amana. Well, joining us on the show now is political commentator and strategist Amitabh Tiwari, co-founder of the online discussion and debate platform Louds. We're also joined by Sanjay Pugalia, editorial director at Quintillion Media. Sanjay, I'll begin this conversation with you. As I mentioned in the introduction, this is a big phase of this election. How critical is this for the BJP, where it's defending positions in Gandhinagar, in parts of Chhattisgarh, UP, and so on, and Maharashtra as well? How critical is it for the BJP?
Extremely critical because BJP in UP, Maharashtra, Karnataka and Gujarat had maximum seat in 2014. In UP, currently in today's phase, they have 7 seats out of 10 that are going for polling. And in Gujarat, they have 26 seats. Everywhere, they will definitely lose some seats. Now, the debate is how much loss will be there in Gujarat. If you go by 2014, then it will be, say, similar kind of verdict. But if you go by 2017 assembly elections, then some loss of seats are definitely bound to happen. But one can argue, counter-argue, that Mr. Modi has a different premium factor when it comes to Lok Sabha election vis-a-vis assembly elections. So we really don't know. But what is very clearly that in North India, BJP losses are significant. And the current phase, today's phase, it is Mulayam Singh land. It is Etah, Firozabad, and other seats, which are Manpuri. Very clearly, very strong area for Mulayam Singh Yadav, and it is a combination of, in Ruhelkhand area, Dalit votes, plus Muslim, plus backwards. So it is purely a BJP, not a BJP area. So BJP must hold on to many seats here. But as we progress along, when we go to eastern UP, the narrative will be quite different. So for BJP, because by the evening 302 seats would have gone for voting, BJP must retain as much as possible.
Amitabh, same question to you. What is your assessment of this phase, and what could this mean for the BJP's prospects?
So this is a very important phase, as Sanjay ji has said. In this phase, BJP and allies had won more than 50% of the seats last time, whereas in phase 1 and 2, NDA had won nearly just 1/3 of the seats. Some of these states like Gujarat, Karnataka, UP, Maharashtra, and Chhattisgarh, in most of these states, BJP was leading. In fact, in Gujarat, it had swept all the 26 seats. But we saw in the assembly elections that BJP was unable to score even a century. Hardik Patel, who was the man who did considerable damage to BJP in Saurashtra, is now in Congress. But in Gujarat, ultimately it will boil down to the Gujarati Asmita. How many people of Gujarat want to continue to see Modi as PM? So that is a key factor there. In UP, the arithmetic in these 10 seats normally lies with MGB, but again it's a matter of chemistry as well, and we've heard reports that Ajit Singh has in fact refused to do any joint rallies with Mayawati because he was asked to remove his shoes. And there are also reports that the minority is not so much enthused to vote this time like last time. In Karnataka, what is happening is that most of the seats which are going to polls are in North Karnataka, where JDS has minuscule presence. So here also it's mostly a contest between BJP and Congress. JDS may not be able to support much. In Maharashtra, I think it is the ability of the spoilers like the Prakash Ambedkar's party and the SP-BSP alliance, how much Dalit votes and how much Muslim votes are they able to get on each seat, and who they will damage will ultimately decide who wins. Chhattisgarh, the Congress looks strong because the farm loan waiver and the MSP, the high MSP price for paddy seems to have worked there. And mind you, Modi factor was the least in Chhattisgarh in 2014. So in that state, there could be maximum losses for the BJP. in Bihar, Mahagathbandhan has tried to expand its MY combination by including Mahadalits, Manjhi, and Kushwaha. But there again, talks are that they have given tickets. MGB has given many tickets to these parties, and there are also allegations that they have probably sold off these tickets. In Odisha, what is happening is that a lot more people are talking that we'll vote for Modi at the center and Naveen at the in the state, but the state has never witnessed a split voting. So that is an interesting story which is unfolding.
Sure.
What will also play a key role is the turnout, because normally lower turnout is good for the incumbent. We saw in Gujarat lower turnout helped BJP to win. We saw in MP and Chhattisgarh a higher turnout and BJP government lost. But if you analyze the last two phases, around 180 odd seats, only in 44% of the seats, around 80, the turnout has increased, while in majority, which is around 105, 106 seats, the turnout has actually reduced.
Sure.
So wherever I go, I do not see that much frenzy for these elections like it was last time. That last time people had made up their mood to throw out the UPA2 government.
Sure.
But this time, there's not much enthu among the voters.
Okay.
And also, the rural voter is silent and is not opening his cards.
Okay, Sanjay,
So ultimately,
sure, Sanjay, if the BJP is unable to repeat its performance of sweeping the Hindi heartland like it did in 2014, where is it going to make up its shortfall? Which part of India will it make up its shortfall?
Yeah, I'll come to that, but just to comment on turnout, by 1 o'clock today, Harsha, the slower turnout are happening in Maharashtra, followed by Odisha and Karnataka. But all other states are kind of turnout is normal. The Assam and West Bengal, as usual, like 2014, are witnessing very high turnout. As far as where from which parts BJP will make up for the shortfall, clearly it is hoping for a major gain in West Bengal, Odisha, and Northeast. Their hope may be on a very higher side, but of course they will make some gains. But I do not see any possibility of making up for the serious shortfall that BJP may have to witness going forward. West Bengal, few seats they will definitely get. But in Assam, BJP has a big hope. But with AIUDF fielding only 3 candidates, and Congress is fighting in most seats, so it is a kind of direct contest. So in the wake of NRC, I think BJP is on the defensive, but BJP is working very hard to really compensate from Assam, Bengal and Odisha. We all know that. They are looking at Kerala also, but I do not see any big gain in Kerala. Maybe 1 seat they may get, but not more than that. But yeah, losses in North India, especially UP, are going to be quite significant, and compensating that from these new greenfield areas looks difficult.
Amitabh, same question to you. Where do you think they're going to make up for the shortfall? Are they going to be increasing reliant on partners, or do you think they will make up in places like the Northeast or in West Bengal, as Sanjay is suggesting?
Now, if there is a serious shortfall, like in UP, if it falls to 40 or 50 seats, and in some other states like Rajasthan, it has 25 out of 25, Gujarat 26 out of 26, so it is bound to fall from this peak. Unfortunately, West Bengal and Odisha do not have that many seats, and there the prospects are not too bright that it will be able to compensate. In Northeast, it had done reasonably well even in the last elections, along with its partners. So actually, if it falls short, it is banking on YSR Congress, so Jagan Reddy, who is expected to do well, KCR of TRS, who is again expected to do well in Telangana, and Naveen, who has already said that he will support any government which is there at the center and which looks after the demands of Odisha. So and these 3 parties are likely to win minimum 35-40 seats, so anywhere between 40 to 50 even if they do well. So these are the 3 parties which could play a key role, and even AIADMK, whereas others might be saying that there could be a sweep. But if even if AIADMK is able to win 4 or 5 seats, that is a bonus for NDA because last time AIADMK was not part of NDA.
All right, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Many thanks indeed for joining us, Amitabh Tiwari, Sanjay Pugalia, for your perspective on phase 3 of polling.
That's all the time we have on Power Lunch. Thanks so much for watching.